A baby creature stares at you with massive dark eyes, its orange fur glowing in filtered forest light. It chirps, not in some generic alien language, but in musical tones that feel oddly familiar, like birdsong mixed with dolphin calls. And here's the thing, it's real, not CGI real, actually physically, tangibly real. 6 puppeteers are bringing this creature to life right there on set, and you can see the vulnerability in every uncertain movement, every twitch of those oversized ears. That's your first introduction to the Ochi, and it's not what you expect à Dafoe. Welcome to 2025, where A24 decided to make their first creature fantasy film, and they didn't do it the way everyone else would. The Legend of Ochi hit theaters in April 2025, and it immediately stood out in a landscape dominated by CGI spectacles and franchise sequels. Here's a movie that looks backward to move forward, embracing practical puppetry, animatronics, and handcrafted world building in an era when most fantasy films are rendered on computers. Director Isaiah Saxon, making his feature debut after years of visually striking work with his collective Encyclopedia Pictura, brought a specific vision to life. What if we made a fantasy adventure that felt like nature documentary footage of a species you've somehow never heard of? The premise is deceptively simple. On the fictional island of Carpathia in the Black Sea, a young farm girl named Yuri has been raised to fear the forest creatures known as the Ochi. Her father, Maxim, played by Dafoe, is the village's self-appointed protector, a man who's built his entire identity around hunting these creatures he believes threaten their livestock and way of life. He's trained child hunters in his image, leading them into the forest like Peter Pan's lost boys turned militant. But when Yuri discovers an injured baby, Ochi left behind by its pack, everything she's been taught starts to crack. What follows isn't your typical girl and her pet story. This is something more fundamental. Helena Zengel, who stunned audiences in News of the World, plays Yuri with a quiet intensity that carries the entire film. She's not some chosen one with special powers. She's just a kid caught between what she's been told to believe and what she's experiencing firsthand. And that baby Ochi? It can't heal her when she gets hurt. It doesn't have supernatural strength. It's vulnerable, scared, and desperately trying to get home to its mother. The creature's only extraordinary ability is its sonic communication, a language based on musical tones that Yuri slowly learns to understand and replicate. But let's talk about why that creature works so damn well. Isaiah Saxon didn't look at Gollum or the aliens from Avatar for inspiration. He looked at nature, specifically Chinese golden snub-nosed monkeys, lemurs, and tarsiers. The design team at John Nolan Studios in London spent months developing an animatronic puppet that required 5 to 6 puppeteers to operate. Inside the baby Ochi's head, about the size of a grapefruit, they crammed roughly 25 servos to create subtle facial expressions. 2 puppeteers controlled just the face, one handling the eyes and eyebrows, another managing the mouth. The rest manipulated the body using rods attached to each limb, creating those small, unpredictable movements that make baby primates so captivating. Saxon wanted those imperfections. The slight wobble when the creature moves. The uncertainty in its gestures. Many of the small imperfections you might observe in a baby primate learning to navigate its body are reflected in rod puppeteering, he explained. That vulnerability wasn't added in post-production, it was built into the creature from the start. And it's not just cute for cute's sake, though yes, it's devastatingly adorable. The practical nature of the puppet means the actors are responding to something real. Finn Wolfhard, who plays Petro, Yuri's adoptive brother, talked about the difference it made. There's a tangible human connection when you're working with puppeteers who are performers themselves, trying to achieve a specific characterization. The baby Ochi isn't a tennis ball on a stick to be replaced later. It's there, it reacts, it breathes in its own mechanical way. This approach shapes everything about the film. Carpathia itself feels lived in and specific. It's not some generic fantasy realm. Contemporary life intersects with ancient traditions on this Black Sea island. You've got gas stations and supermarkets alongside ceremonial armor and old-world superstitions. The villagers genuinely believe the Ochi are dangerous, not because they're idiots, but because fear gets passed down, solidifies into truth, becomes the foundation for an entire community's identity. Maxim isn't a cartoon villain. He's a man who's convinced he's protecting people, even as his obsession tears his family apart. That family dysfunction is where the real heart of the story lives. Yuri's mother, Dasha, is played by Emily Watson in a role that reveals itself in layers. She's been estranged from the family, and we learn why. She lost her hand to Ochi venom years ago, and Maxim cut off her arm to save her life. But instead of hating the creatures, Dasha studied them. She learned their language, discovered it has similarities to music, spent years researching these beings that everyone else just wants dead. When Yuri gets bitten by the baby, Ochi, her arm swelling, blistering, turning that distinctive blue-purple color, she assumes the venom is what lets her suddenly understand the creature's vocalizations. Dasha corrects her. I showed you the language when you were a baby. You're just remembering. That revelation shifts everything. Yuri's connection to the Ochi isn't magical. It's learned, then forgotten, then relearned. A metaphor for how we relate to the natural world, how we lose touch with instinctive understanding when fear takes over. The journey to return the baby Ochi to its family becomes a journey through Yuri's fractured family. Maxim and his young hunters pursue her, determined to kill the creature. Dasha, racked with guilt over her coldness toward Yuri, ventures out to find her daughter. Petro, tired of following Maxim blindly, starts questioning the man who raised him. And at the center of it all is this girl and this creature, both just trying to get home to their mothers. Saxon doesn't shy away from real stakes either. This isn't a sanitized adventure where everyone's safe because it's a family film. The Ochi venom is genuinely dangerous. Yuri's life is actually at risk. The conflict between Maxim and Dasha erupts into violence. He holds her at gunpoint. She drives him from her house. The wildfire that starts the crisis kills livestock and threatens lives. When Yuri and the baby Ochi take refuge in a cave system, swimming through underground rivers to escape the hunters, the danger feels earned. Why? What's fascinating is how Saxon subverts the typical fantasy adventure structure. There's no ancient prophecy, no magical MacGuffin, no chosen one destiny. Just a kid making a choice that goes against everything she's been taught because she's seen the truth with her own eyes. The baby Ochi speaks about missing its mother. Yuri claims she doesn't miss hers, frustrated by both parents. But that parallel, two young creatures separated from their mothers, trying to find their way home, is where the emotional core lives. By the time Maxim finally removes his ceremonial armor and follows Yuri into the caves, ready to actually listen instead of attack, the film has earned its reconciliation. Not through magic or miracle, but through exhaustion and necessity, and the slow realization that maybe, just maybe, what we've been taught to fear isn't actually the enemy. It's a fantasy film grounded in the textures of the real world, where understanding requires effort, communication is learned through trial and error, and fear is passed down until someone finally says, enough. So yeah, a baby creature with dark eyes and orange fur, 6 puppeteers, a girl who learns to speak its language, and a story about what it means to question the beliefs you've inherited. That's where we're starting, and it gets deeper from here. This is the world of the Legend of Ochi. Tactile, messy, emotionally complex, and built on the radical idea that practical effects can still create genuine wonder in 2025. It's a fantasy film grounded in the textures of the real world, where understanding requires effort, communication is learned through trial and error, and fear is passed down until someone finally says, enough. So yeah, a baby creature with dark eyes and orange fur, 6 puppeteers, a girl who learns to speak its language, and a story about what it means to question the beliefs you've inherited. Yuri's life before the Ochi was simple in the worst way. Farm chores, silence, living under the shadow of a father who measured worth in obedience. Maxim runs the household like he runs his hunting parties. Strict hierarchy, no questions, absolute certainty about who the enemy is. He's raised Yuri and her adopted brother Petro with one clear message: the Ochi are monsters, livestock killers, threats to everything the village has built. And because he survived losing his wife's hand to them, because he made the brutal choice to amputate Dasha's arm himself, his conviction carries weight. The film opens in this world of inherited certainty. Maxim's not cruel for cruelty's sake. He genuinely believes he's keeping people safe. But there's a rigidity to his worldview that's starting to crack under its own weight. Petro goes through the motions, wearing the ceremonial armor, following the older man into the forest with the other young hunters. But you can see the doubt creeping in. Finn Wolfhard plays him with this exhausted compliance, like someone who's realized they've been following a path they never actually chose. Yuri's different. She doesn't openly rebel, but she doesn't fully accept the doctrine either. Helena Zengel brings this watchful intelligence to the role. Yuri observes more than she speaks, questions more than she challenges. When Maxim lectures about Ochi danger, she nods, but her eyes tell a different story. Then the wildfire changes everything. Forest fires sweep through the island, driving animals from their habitats. The Ochi packs flee deeper into the woods, and in the chaos, a baby gets left behind. Whether it's injured or simply too slow to keep up with the adults doesn't matter. What matters is that it's alone, vulnerable, and in the wrong place when Yuri stumbles across it during her farm work. This is where Saxon's creature design pays off immediately. The baby Ochi doesn't attack. It doesn't bare teeth or growl. It curls into itself, making itself smaller, those enormous eyes tracking Yuri's every movement with obvious fear. The puppeteers working the animatronic give it these tiny flinches, ears flattening back, limbs pulling in closer to its body. It's prey behavior, not predator behavior. And Yuri, who's been told her entire life that these creatures are the threat, has to reconcile what she's seeing with what she's been taught. She doesn't decide to help it right away. That's important. There's a long moment where she just stands there, processing. The Ochi makes a sound, those musical tones, somewhere between chirping and singing, and Yuri's face shifts. Recognition? Confusion? Something stirs in her memory, though she can't quite place it. On G. When she finally moves closer, the creature flinches harder. She stops, tries again, extends a hand slowly, the way you'd approach a frightened animal you're not entirely sure won't bite. The Ochi watches her hand like it's a weapon. Then, tentatively, it reaches out one small paw and touches her fingertips. The bite happens moments later, but not maliciously. The baby Ochi is scared, cornered, and when Yuri moves too quickly trying to check if it's injured, instinct takes over. Teeth sink into her forearm and she yanks back with a shout. The venom acts fast. Her arm starts swelling almost immediately, skin darkening to that blue-purple bruising color her father has shown her in cautionary tales. This is what he warned about. This is proof he was right. Ex. Except the baby Ochi looks horrified. It backs away, making distressed sounds, eyes even wider now, clearly upset about what just happened. It didn't want to bite her. It was terrified and reacted, and now it seems to understand it's hurt someone who wasn't actually a threat. Yuri clutches her arm, breathing hard, venom burning through her bloodstream. She should run. Get back to the farm. Tell Maxim. Let him organize the hunting party to kill this creature like he's killed so many others. That's what she's supposed to do. She doesn't run. Instead, she listens, because as the venom spreads, and this is where the film gets genuinely interesting, something shifts in her perception. The musical chirps the Ochi is making start to resolve into patterns, meaning, not words exactly, but emotional communication she can suddenly parse. Fear, sorry, mother. Lost out Yuri's been told venom causes hallucinations, makes you see things that aren't there. Maybe that's what this is, or maybe, and this is the thought that scares her more, maybe she's understanding something real. She wraps her arm in cloth torn from her shirt, makes a split-second decision that will define everything that follows, and tells the baby Ochi to stay quiet. Then she heads home, arm throbbing, mind racing, already constructing the lie she'll tell her father about how she got injured. Back at the farm, Maxim examines the bite with grim satisfaction. See, this is what they do. He's almost pleased to have his worldview confirmed, to have physical evidence of Ochi danger on his daughter's own arm. He wants to organize a hunt immediately, track down whatever creature did this, eliminate the threat before it attacks someone else. Yuri lies, says she doesn't know where the Ochi went, that it fled after biting her, that she didn't get a good look. Petra watches her lie and says nothing, but you can see he knows. The two of them have grown up reading each other's tells. He doesn't call her out though, just gives her this long look that says they'll talk about this later, away from Maxim's militant certainty. Night. That night, while Maxim sharpens weapons and rallies his young hunters for a tracking expedition at dawn, Yuri sneaks back to where she left the baby Ochi. It's still there, huddled in the same spot, making soft, distressed sounds. When it sees her, it doesn't flee. Instead, it chirps that same pattern, mother, lost, home. And Yuri understands it, clearly, unmistakably. This isn't venom-induced hallucination anymore. She's genuinely comprehending this creature's communication in a way that feels both foreign and strangely familiar. She doesn't have a plan yet. Doesn't know how to get the baby back to its pack without her father finding out. Doesn't even know for sure that she should help this creature that bit her, that represents everything she's been raised to fear. But she's seen something in those dark eyes that she can't unsee. Not a monster, but a scared infant desperate to find its mother. The parallel hits her harder than she expects. Yuri doesn't have her mother either. Dasha left years ago after the amputation, unable to stay in a house where Maxim's obsession with Ochi hunting consumed everything. Emily Watson's character exists as a ghost in this household, rarely mentioned but constantly present in the silences between father and daughter. Yuri claims she doesn't miss her, doesn't need her, has built walls around that abandonment. But here's a baby creature making the same desperate sounds about maternal separation, and something in Yuri cracks open. She makes a promise she's not sure she can keep. "I'll help you find her." The baby Ochi tilts its head, those oversized ears rotating forward, processing her tone if not her exact words. Then it moves closer and gently bumps its head against her leg. The first gesture of trust between them. E.T.S. Saxon shoots this moment in fading twilight, natural light filtering through trees, the practical puppet gaining this ethereal quality against the real landscape. There's no swelling music cue, no magical glow to signify the bond forming. Just a girl and a creature, both lost in different ways, making a connection that will force them both to question everything they thought they knew about family, belonging, and inherited fear. When Yuri returns home that night, Maxim is asleep with hunting maps spread across the table. She looks at his weathered face, sees the absolute certainty there even in rest, and realizes she's crossed a line she can't uncross. She's going to defy him, not with loud rebellion, but with quiet, determined action. Petro finds her staring at their father. "You're really going to do this," he says, "not a question." Yuri meets his eyes and nods once. He sighs, runs a hand through his hair, looks torn between family loyalty and the growing sense that maybe Maxim's crusade isn't as righteous as they've been taught. "Don't get killed," Petro finally says. It's not permission, but it's not betrayal either. It's the best he can offer while he figures out where he stands in all this. Yuri packs supplies, food, water, bandages for her still swollen arm, a map she steals from Maxim's desk. At dawn, while the hunting party prepares to scour the forest, she slips away with a baby Ochi hidden in her backpack, its musical chirps muffled against her shoulder. The journey to return the creature to its family begins, and with it, the unraveling of everything Yuri has been taught about the world and her place in it. Yuri packs supplies, food, water, bandages for her still swollen arm, a map she steals from Maxim's desk. At dawn, while the hunting party prepares to scour the forest, she slips away with a baby Ochi hidden in her backpack, its musical chirps muffled against her shoulder. The journey to return the creature to his family begins, and with it, the unraveling of everything Yuri has been taught about the world and her place in it. The forest doesn't make it easy. Carpathia's wilderness is dense, tangled, hostile to anyone who doesn't know its rhythms. Yuri's following half-remembered stories about where Ochi packs migrate, piecing together fragments from overheard hunting party discussions and folklore. She's never fully believed. The baby Ochi clings to her shoulders, its small claws gripping her shirt, chirping directions she's learning to interpret on the fly. Because here's what Saxon captures beautifully: language learning isn't instant. It's messy, frustrating, full of miscommunication and trial and error. The baby makes a particular trill, and Yuri thinks it means water. She leads them to a stream. The creature looks confused, makes the sound again, this time with a different pitch at the end. Not water, danger near water. She realizes her mistake when she spots fresh tracks. Maxim's hunting party already swept through this area an hour ago, searching for exactly what she's carrying. .eg. They change course, head deeper into terrain she doesn't recognize. The baby teaches her through repetition and context. High-pitched whistles mean fear or warning. Lower, resonant tones signal comfort or safety. Clicks and trills describe direction, north, south, higher ground, water sources. It's a language built for navigating wilderness, for communicating across distances where visual contact isn't possible. And Yuri's picking it up faster than she should, faster than makes logical sense, fragments clicking into place in her mind like recovering a skill rather than learning something new. U.E. That realization gnaws at her. The venom's almost cleared her system now. The swelling in her arm has gone down, the discoloration fading to yellow-green bruising. But her comprehension of the Ochi's vocalizations hasn't diminished at all. If anything, it's sharpened. On the second day, exhausted and running low on food, she makes a decision that terrifies her. She's going to find Dasha. Her mother lives somewhere on the outskirts, in the research station she set up after Maxim drove her out. Yuri hasn't seen her in years, doesn't even know if Dasha will help or turn her away. But she needs answers about this language, about why it feels so familiar in her mouth when she tries to repeat the baby Ochi sounds back to a dot. And Dasha, older and harder than Yuri remembers, working at a desk with her remaining hand while a prosthetic lies unused on a nearby table. Emily Watson plays this moment with such careful restraint. No melodramatic reunion, no tears, just a mother and daughter staring at each other across years of silence and hurt. "You brought an Ochi here," Dasha says flatly, spotting the creature immediately. Not angry, not surprised, just stating fact. Yuri tightens her grip on the baby protectively. It needs to get back to its mother. "I'm helping it." "Like I used to," Dasha replies, "and there's a whole history in those 4 words. She steps aside, gestures them in, starts pulling out medical supplies before Yuri even asks. Her mother's been preparing for this moment, Yuri realizes, or something like it. Waiting for the day someone from the village would finally question what they've been taught about these creatures. Go. Over weak tea and dried fish, Dasha explains what Maxim never wanted anyone to know. She didn't lose her hand in some random Ochi attack. She was studying them, learning their patterns, and got too close to a mother protecting her young. The bite was defensive, not aggressive. And after Maxim amputated her arm, after the trauma and the pain and the impossibility of staying with a man who refused to see anything but monsters in the forest, she left. But she didn't stop studying. She spent years documenting Ochi vocalizations, mapping them to musical notation, discovering that their language shares structural similarities with songbird communication and whale calls. You taught me, Yuri says, and it's not a question anymore. It's memory surfacing after years of suppression. Dasha nods slowly. When you were very small, before Maxim realized what I was doing and forbade it. She looks at her daughter with something approaching regret. You were maybe 3 years old. You'd imitate the sounds I recorded, perfect pitch, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Then he found out, and everything changed. The baby Ochi, sensing the emotional weight of the conversation, makes a soft, questioning sound. Dasha responds immediately in its own language, a series of clicks and low tones that make the creature's ears perk up with obvious delight. Someone who can speak properly, not just fumble through basic phrases. The baby launches into rapid-fire vocalizations, and Dasha translates. Its pack was fleeing the wildfire, heading toward the northern caves where they shelter during danger. Its mother will return to look for it, but only if it can reach the correct location. Every day separated increases the risk of permanent loss. The caves are 3 days from here, Dasha says. Maxim knows about them. He'll be setting traps, waiting for Ochi to emerge. She looks at Yuri's determined face and sighs. You're going anyway. I made a promise. You're your father's daughter in that way. Stubborn. But Dasha's already pulling out better maps than the one Yuri stole, marking routes that avoid known hunting party positions. She packs real supplies, rope, flares, water purification tablets. Then she does something Yuri doesn't expect. She straps on the prosthetic, tests the fingers, and grabs a walking stick. I'm coming with you. Yuri wants to say no, wants to push away this woman who abandoned her, who left her alone with Maxim's rigid worldview and anger. But she's practical enough to know she needs help, and the baby Ochi has already curled up in Dasha's lap, trusting her in a way it took Yuri days to earn. Us. So they travel together, mother and daughter and creature. The conversations happen in fragments between hiking, setting up camp, navigating difficult terrain. Dasha explains why she stayed away, not because she didn't love Yuri, but because Maxim made it clear she could have their daughter or her research, not both. I chose wrong, she admits quietly one night. I thought you'd be safer with him. I thought maybe he'd soften without me there contradicting him. I was wrong on both counts. Yuri doesn't forgive her, not yet. But she starts to understand the impossible position Dasha was in, the choice no mother should have to make, as she sees how her mother moves through the forest, confident, knowledgeable, reading signs that Yuri misses entirely. This is Dasha's real home now. She's built a life in the wilderness, studying creatures everyone else fears, finding beauty where others see only threat. The baby Ochi becomes the bridge between them. When it needs comfort, it goes to both of them indiscriminately. When it wants to play, it chirps challenges that make Dasha laugh, the first time Yuri's heard that sound in years. They take turns carrying it when it gets tired, teaching each other vocabulary in the Ochi language, comparing notes on what different vocalizations mean. On the 4th day, Petro finds them. He's alone, which is the first surprise. The second surprise is that he's not there to drag Yuri home. He's left the hunting party, ditched Maxim's crusade, because he finally asked himself a question he should have asked years ago. Why do we believe this? Finn Wolfhard plays this scene with exhausted clarity, someone who's realized they've been complicit in something they never fully examined. He sees the baby Ochi and flinches, years of conditioning making him reach for a weapon he's not carrying anymore. Then he watches how it interacts with Yuri and Dasha, sees the obvious intelligence and emotion in its responses, and something in him breaks. Or maybe heals. It's hard to tell the difference sometimes. DOD. Dad's planning something, Petro warns. He knows you're heading for the northern caves. He's got traps set up, firearms, the whole hunting party waiting. He thinks you've been possessed or poisoned by venom, that you're not thinking clearly. He's planning to save you by killing the creature in front of you, to break whatever hold he thinks it has. The group makes camp to strategize. They're still 2 days from the caves, and Maxim's party is closing in from multiple directions. The baby Ochi seems to sense the tension, staying quieter than usual, pressed against Yuri's side. When she tries to practice the language with it, teaching herself the more complex tonal variations that indicate specific locations, her voice cracks with stress. Dasha makes a call that surprises everyone. They're going underground. There's a river system that runs beneath this part of the island, caves that connect to the northern shelter site. It's dangerous, unmapped sections, tight passages, risk of flooding, but it's the only route Maxim won't predict. The baby Ochi reacts to this plan with obvious fear, making distressed sounds that Dasha translates as memories of darkness, water, separation. This creature survived one trauma already when it got separated from its pack. Now they're asking it to trust them through another ordeal. Yuri crouches down, makes eye contact with those huge dark eyes, and speaks in the Ochi's own language. Simple phrases she's learned: safe, together, mother, soon. The creature trembles but stops vocalizing fear, reaches out one small paw and grips Yuri's finger. Trust, earned through days of kept promises and mutual protection. They descend into the cave system as dawn breaks above ground. Maxim and his hunters wake to cold trails, their quarry vanished, and the older man's fury echoes through the forest like the Ochi calls he's spent his life silencing. But down in the dark, navigating by headlamp and the baby Ochi's increasingly confident directional chirps, Yuri's learning the final lessons of its language, the words for hope, for reunion, for the kind of family you choose rather than inherit. The real journey's only just begun, and the caves ahead will test everything they've built. They descend into the cave system as dawn breaks above ground. Maxim and his hunters wake to cold trails, their quarry vanished, and the older man's fury echoes through the forest like the Ochi calls he's spent his life silencing. But down in the dark, navigating by headlamp, and the baby Ochi's increasingly confident directional chirps, Yuri's learning the final lessons of its language, the words for hope, for reunion, for the kind of family you choose rather than inherit. The real journey's only just begun, and the caves ahead will test everything they've built. Water fills the passage ahead. Not a stream you can wade through, a full submersion section where the cave system dips below the water table. Dasha shines her light into the murky darkness and calculates odds. Yuri doesn't want to hear. The baby Ochi backs away from the water's edge, making sharp distress sounds that need no translation. This creature is terrestrial, not aquatic. Its fur will soak up water like a sponge, drag it down, make swimming nearly impossible. We wrap it, Dasha decides, already pulling out a waterproof bag from her pack. Seal it tight, heap air inside, you pull it through while it holds its breath. She looks at Yuri. It'll be terrifying for it, but it's the only way. Petro's checking the passage depth with a weighted rope, maybe 30 feet of full submersion. Exits into a larger cavern on the other side. He surfaces, shaking water from his hair. Current's not too bad, but you'll be doing it blind for the last section. Yuri crouches next to the baby Ochi, speaks in its language. The clearest she's managed yet, tones precise enough that Dasha nods with approval. Trust me. Like before, always kept safe. The creature trembles, but climbs into the waterproof bag when Yuri holds it open, those massive eyes locked on her face the entire time. She seals the top, leaving enough air inside, and tests the buoyancy. It floats, which helps. Barely. The swim-through is exactly as horrible as expected. Cold water, shocking her system. Complete darkness when her headlamp fails halfway through, her lungs screaming for air while she kicks forward with one arm pulling the bag containing a terrified creature who's putting absolute faith in someone it met less than a week ago. When she finally breaks surface in the cavern on the far side, gasping and shaking, she tears open the bag immediately. The baby Ochi is soaked, despite the waterproofing, shivering violently, but alive. It presses against her chest and makes the most plaintive sound she's heard yet, half relief, half trauma. Dasha and Petro surface moments later, and they don't stop to rest. Voices echo from somewhere behind them in the cave system. Maxim's found the entrance. He's following them down, and he's brought at least 3 of his hunters with him. The chase through the caverns is claustrophobic nightmare fuel. Saxon shoots it with handheld cameras tight on faces, the darkness pressing in from all sides. The baby Ochi guides them now, its vocalizations bouncing off stone walls, reading the echoes like sonar to navigate passages that would be suicide without that biological advantage. Left here, down, narrow, careful. Yuri translates for the others, trusting the creature completely even as Maxim's pursuit gets louder behind them. They emerge into a cathedral-sized chamber lit by cracks in the ceiling far above, natural light filtering down in golden shafts. And there, on the far side, near passages that lead to the surface, adult Ochi, dozens of them. The entire pack that fled the wildfire, sheltering in these ancient caves until it's safe to return to their territory. G2. The baby Ochi makes a sound. Yuri's never heard from it before. Pure joy, recognition. It scrambles from her arms and races across the cavern floor toward a larger Ochi, its mother, has to be, from the way the adult immediately drops to all fours and gathers the infant against her chest, checking it over with frantic attention, making low crooning sounds that echo through the space. Yuri watches the reunion from across the cavern, and something in her chest cracks wide open. This is what she brought this creature through hell to find. This moment of a mother and child reunited after trauma and separation and fear. The adult Ochi looks up, makes direct eye contact with Yuri, and vocalizes something complex. Gratitude, recognition, acknowledgement of debt owed. Ichi. She's thanking you, Dasha whispers, tears streaming down her face, saying your name will be remembered. That your pack now, in their way of understanding it. The moment shatters when gunfire cracks against stone. Maxim's entered the cavern, rifle raised, his young hunters fanning out behind him. But he's frozen now, staring at the scene he's never let himself witness. Dozens of Ochi, not attacking, not threatening, just existing as a family group protecting their young. It contradicts everything he's built his identity around. Ichi. Step away from them, Yuri, he orders, voice shaking. You don't understand what they are, what they're capable of. I understand exactly what they are, Yuri shoots back, positioning herself between Maxim and the Ochi pack. They're parents protecting their children, like you pretend to be. The accusation lands hard. Maxim's face twists, and for a second he looks less like a righteous protector and more like a man desperately clinging to a worldview that's already collapsed. Dasha steps forward, unarmed, just one woman with a prosthetic hand facing down her ex-husband and his weapons. Look at them, Maxim, she says quietly. Really look. When have they ever attacked first? When have they ever hunted us the way you hunt them? She gestures to the adult Ochi, who formed a protective circle around their young but aren't showing aggression. No bared teeth, no attack postures, just defensive grouping. Every encounter you've told stories about, every dangerous Ochi, they were defending themselves from you. You lost your hand. Because I got too close to a mother with babies. I startled her. She bit defensively, and you made it worse by cutting off my arm instead of treating the venom properly. Dasha's voice cracks. I never blamed them. I blamed you for refusing to learn, for passing your fear down to children you had no right to militarize. One of the young hunters, barely 14, ceremonial armor too big on his thin frame, lowers his weapon. Then another. Then a third. They're looking at the Ochi with new eyes, seeing creatures instead of monsters, watching the obvious care the adults show their young. Maxim's losing his soldiers, losing his certainty. His rifle wavers. I protected this village. Everything I did was to keep people safe. You kept people afraid, Petro says, speaking up for the first time. There's a difference, Dad. And I'm done pretending there isn't. The title hits Maxim like a physical blow. Dad. Not sir. Not the formal address he's insisted on since Petro was small. His adoptive son is claiming relationship while rejecting authority, and you can see Maxim recalculating, trying to find solid ground in a worldview that's turned to quicksand beneath him. The baby Ochi, safe with its mother now, peers around the adult's bulk and makes a sound directly at Maxim, not aggressive, curious. The musical tones hang in the cavern air, and Dasha translates before she can stop herself. It's asking why you're so scared. Maxim stares at the creature, at his daughter who learned its language and risked everything to reunite it with its family. At his ex-wife, who's devoted years to understanding what he's devoted, years to destroying. At Petro, who stopped following orders and started thinking for himself. At his young hunters, who've lowered their weapons and are looking to him for guidance that he suddenly realizes he's not qualified to give. Et. The rifle drops. Not thrown down in dramatic gesture, just lowered slowly, hands shaking, and then placed on the ground with the careful movements of someone defusing a bomb. Maxim looks smaller without it, older. The ceremonial armor he wears, the costume he's used to make himself larger than life, suddenly looks ridiculous in this space where real creatures live, real lives he's never bothered to understand. Go. I don't know how to not be this, he admits, and it's the most honest thing Yuri's ever heard from him. Then learn, Dasha says simply, the way she did. She nods at Yuri. The way they'll teach you, if you let them. The adult Ochi, the mother, makes a decision. She picks up her baby, walks slowly across the cavern floor, and stops 10 feet from Maxim. Every person in that space holds their breath. She sets her infant down, nudges it forward gently, and vocalizes something that Dasha translates with wonder in her voice. She's offering to let him meet her child properly. It's how they build trust between groups. Introducing the young ones. Maxim drops to his knees, not in surrender but in something like supplication. His weathered hands reach out slowly, and the creature sniffs his fingers, those huge eyes studying his face with preternatural intelligence. Then it chirps, bright and clear, and the mother vocalizes approval. Yuri watches her father cry for the first time in her memory. Silent tears tracking through dirt and sweat, his whole body shaking as years of rigid certainty crumble into the realization of everything he's destroyed in the name of protection. It's not redemption, not yet. That'll take years of work. But it's a beginning. The Ochi pack starts moving, heading for the passages that lead to the surface. The wildfire's burned out. It's safe to return to their territory. The baby stays close to its mother but keeps looking back at Yuri, and she understands. This is goodbye. She kneels, speaks a farewell in the creature's language, thanks it for teaching her to question what she'd been told. The baby responds with a sound that needs no translation. Affection, gratitude, pack bond, that distance won't erase. One. When the Ochi disappear into the tunnels, the cavern feels emptier. But the silence between the humans is different now, less hostile, more uncertain, which is somehow better than false certainty ever was. Maxim removes his ceremonial armor piece by piece and stacks it against the cavern wall. What's left is just a man who spent decades being wrong and needs to figure out how to live with that knowledge. He looks at Dasha, at Yuri, at Petro. His family, fractured but still here. Teach me, he says hoarsely, the language, all of it. I need to understand. Dasha considers this for a long moment, then nods once. It'll take time. I have nothing but time now. Maxim's voice is hollow, exhausted, but there's something underneath, a willingness to be empty so he can fill himself with something better. They climb toward the surface together, not whole, not healed, but moving in the right direction. Above ground, sunlight streams through burned forest, and somewhere in the distance, an Ochi pack sings its territorial calls, music that was always there, waiting for humans to finally learn how to listen. They climb toward the surface together, not whole, not healed, but moving in the right direction. Above ground, sunlight streams through burned forest, and somewhere in the distance, an Ochi pack sings its territorial calls, music that was always there, waiting for humans to finally learn how to listen. Helena Zengel makes choices. Most young actors wouldn't dare. Watch her face when Yuri first encounters the baby Ochi. There's no Disney-fied wonder, no immediate warmth. Instead, Zengel shows confusion, fear, and the slower process of someone whose entire worldview is being challenged in real time. She's not playing girl who loves animals, she's playing cognitive dissonance made flesh. At just 17 during filming, Zengel already understood something crucial about performance. Stillness communicates more than movement. When Maxim lectures about Ochi danger, she doesn't roll her eyes or cross her arms in obvious rebellion. She just watches him with this penetrating gaze that suggests she's cataloging his statements, measuring them against her own observations, storing contradictions for later examination. It's the kind of performance intelligence that earned her a Golden Globe nomination for News of the World at age 12, and she's only gotten sharper since. What makes her work in The Legend of Ochi particularly impressive is how she handles the puppet. Zengel admitted this was a childhood dream, acting opposite something that felt genuinely alive. She'd grown up convinced her stuffed animals could talk, and here was a creature with moving eyes, shifting expressions, genuine weight and presence in her arms. But she doesn't let that excitement make the performance precious or sentimental. When the baby Ochi bites her, Zengel's reaction is visceral pain, anger, betrayal flashing across her face before she catches herself and remembers this is a scared animal acting on instinct. The language learning sequences showcase her technical precision. Yuri's not magically fluent overnight. Zengel shows the frustration of someone trying to replicate sounds her vocal cords aren't designed for, the small victories when she finally nails a particular trill, the embarrassment when she thinks she said safe but actually communicated something that makes the Ochi look at her in confusion. She worked closely with the puppeteers, treating them as scene partners rather than technicians, and that collaborative energy shows in how natural the girl-creature relationship feels. There's a moment late in the film, in the cavern before the reunion, where Yuri just holds the baby Ochi and rocks it gently while it shivers from the underwater swim. Zengel doesn't add dialogue or force emotion, she just breathes with the puppet's movements, synchronizes her body language to convey protection and apology and determination all at once. It's the kind of performance beat that only works if you're genuinely present with your scene partner, even when that partner is made of foam and servos. Willem Dafoe could have made Maxim a cartoon villain. God knows the script gives him opportunities. The ceremonial armor, the cult-like young hunters, the monomaniacal obsession with eradicating the Ochi. But Dafoe's too smart for that. He plays Maxim as a true believer, someone who's convinced himself that cruelty is kindness, that violence is protection. Look at how he handles the early scenes with the young hunters. When he tells them, "I know your pain," Dafoe delivers the line with genuine tenderness. This isn't manipulation for manipulation's sake. Maxim actually believes he's offering these boys something valuable, purpose, belonging, a way to transform fear into action. It's the same dangerous sincerity that makes real-world extremists so effective at recruitment. Dafoe understands that Maxim sees himself as a father figure, a protector. Even as he's indoctrinating children into violence, the armor becomes a character choice, not just a costume element. Maxim's the only one who wears the full Viking-inspired suit while his young hunters stay in regular clothes. Dafoe uses that weight, the physicality of moving in armor, to show how Maxim's trapped himself in a role he can't escape. Watch how differently he moves when armored versus the final cave scene when he's stripped down to regular clothes. In armor, he's rigid, performative, larger than life. Without it, he's just a scared old man who's built his entire identity on a lie he's finally been forced to confront. There's a scene where Maxim discovers Yuri's missing and the baby Ochi is gone, and for just a flash, maybe 2 seconds, Dafoe lets fear show through the fury. Not fear of the creature, fear that he's losing his daughter, that his ideology has driven away the one person he actually loves. Then the armor goes back up, emotionally and literally, and he's back to hunting mode. But we've seen the vulnerability underneath. The actor talked about how Maxim undergoes enlightenment at the end of his radicalization, and that's such a perfect way to frame the character arc. This isn't redemption in any easy sense. When Maxim cries in the cavern after the baby Ochi lets him touch it, Dafoe plays it as shame, horror, grief for all the destruction he's caused. It's the face of someone realizing they've wasted decades on hatred that had no basis in reality. That's a heavier performance note than simple villainous defeat, and Dafoe commits to it fully. Emily Watson's in a more difficult position. Dasha exists primarily in memory and absence for most of the runtime. When she finally appears at a research station, Watson has to immediately establish years of backstory through body language and tone. The prosthetic arm is part of that. Watson doesn't hide it or treat it as a limitation. She uses it to show how Dasha's adapted, how she's built a new life around this trauma that Maxim caused. Watch Watson's face when she sees Yuri for the first time in years. There's love there, obviously, but also guilt, resignation, and a kind of desperate hunger to explain herself that she knows she has no right to voice. She doesn't rush to embrace her daughter. She stands back, respects the distance Yuri's putting between them, and waits to see if she's earned the right to be in this girl's life again. It's a masterclass in playing regret without making it self-pitying. What's fascinating about Watson's performance is how she distinguishes between Dasha with Yuri and Dasha with the Ochi. Around her daughter, she's careful, measured, constantly checking herself to avoid overstepping. But when she's communicating with the baby Ochi, Watson shows a woman completely in her element, confident, joyful, free. You can see why she chose this research over returning to a household where Maxim would never let her be this version of herself. It's not that she loves the Ochi more than Yuri. It's that she needs to be in an environment where curiosity and empathy are valued instead of punished. The scene where Dasha reveals she taught Yuri the Ochi language as a baby is particularly well played. Watson doesn't deliver it as tragic confession or melodramatic revelation. She states it simply, like acknowledging a fact she's lived with for years, but Yuri's only now ready to hear. Then she watches her daughter process that information, and Watson shows this tiny moment of hope. Maybe Yuri will understand why she left, why she had to protect this knowledge even at the cost of being present as a mother. There's a physicality to Watson's work that grounds the character. Dasha moves through the forest with confidence that comes from years of field research. She's stronger than Yuri expects, more capable, and Watson uses that competence to show what this woman's built for herself in exile. When she straps on the prosthetic to join the journey, it's not a moment of triumph or empowerment in the Instagram sense. It's just practical. She needs both hands for this terrain, so she'll use the tool available even if she prefers not to. Watson plays it matter of fact, which makes it more powerful than any inspirational music cue could. Finn Wolfhard's got the trickiest role in some ways. Petro could easily become the generic supportive sibling, but Wolfhard finds interesting shading. He plays Petro as exhausted more than anything else. Tired of performing loyalty to Maxim's crusade, tired of pretending he doesn't have doubts, tired of watching his sister suffer under their father's rigidity. When Petro discovers Yuri's helping the baby Ochi, Wolfhard doesn't play shock or betrayal. He plays recognition, like he's been waiting for someone to finally crack, to finally say the thing everyone's thinking but nobody dares voice. His "don't get killed" is delivered with this dark humor that suggests he's both scared for her and weirdly proud that she's got the courage to do what he hasn't. The decision to leave Maxim's hunting party and find Yuri is the pivot point for Petro, and Wolfhard handles it with understated conviction. He doesn't give some big speech about choosing the right side. He just stops following, shows up in Dasha's group looking drained and determined in equal measure. When he sees the baby Ochi for the first time, Wolfhard shows the full war happening inside Petro. Years of conditioning versus present evidence, loyalty to Maxim versus emerging personal ethics. He physically flinches back, hand moving toward a weapon that's not there anymore, then forcing himself to stay present and look at this creature he's been taught to fear. What's subtle about Wolfhard's work is how he plays Petro's relationship to masculinity. Maxim's raised these boys on a very specific model: strength through violence, identity through opposition, manhood proved by conquest. Petro's starting to see how hollow that is, but he doesn't have another model to replace it with yet. Wolfhard shows someone trying to figure out how to be strong in a different way, how to protect without destroying. It's character work that trusts the audience to read subtext rather than stating everything explicitly. Then there's the baby Ochi itself, which sounds absurd to discuss as a performance, but becomes crucial when you remember this is 6 puppeteers collaborating to create one coherent character. The creature's arc is remarkably specific: initial trauma, growing trust, joy in communication, terror during the underwater passage, and finally, the ecstatic reunion with its mother. What makes the puppet work emotionally is that the operators never forget it's a baby. It doesn't have supernatural abilities or plot-convenient intelligence. It gets tired, it gets scared, it makes mistakes. When Yuri's trying to teach it to stay quiet but it chirps anyway because it's excited, that's not the creature being stupid, it's being a child who can't fully regulate its impulses yet. Those small imperfections, Saxon specifically wanted, the wobble in its movements, the uncertain quality of its gestures, create vulnerability that CGI often loses in pursuit of smoothness. The eyes are the key technical achievement, and whoever operated them understood restraint. The baby Ochi's gaze tracks naturally, focuses where it should focus, but doesn't always make perfect eye contact with its scene partners. Sometimes it's distracted by movement in its peripheral vision. Sometimes it looks away from Yuri during emotional moments because that's what overwhelmed creatures do. Those imperfect responses, read as organic behavior rather than engineered sentiment. What's remarkable is how the puppeteers created a character arc through pure physicality. Early in the film, the baby Ochi keeps its body compact, ears flat, movements minimal and defensive. As it learns to trust Yuri, it literally opens up ears, perking forward, limbs extending with more confidence, engaging playfully instead of fearfully. By the reunion scene, its body language is completely different. Bold approach to its mother, excited vocalizations at full volume, the physical abandon of a child who knows it's safe again. The decision to make this creature through practical effects instead of CGI fundamentally shapes how all the actors relate to it. When Zingle holds the puppet, she's feeling its actual weight, responding to its genuine movements, working with human performers who are just as invested in making the relationship believable. That tangible presence creates performances that no amount of tennis ball on-a-stick methodology can replicate. Nye, the character work in The Legend of Ochi operates on a principle that's increasingly rare in fantasy films: restraint. Nobody's playing archetypes, nobody's hitting emotional beats in predictable ways. Zingle refuses to make Yuri conventionally likable. She's prickly, secretive, not always good at expressing what she feels. Dafoe finds the human tragedy in Maxim's fanaticism without excusing the harm he's caused. Watson gives Dash a complexity that acknowledges maternal failure alongside scientific passion. Wolfhard shows the painful work of deprogramming yourself from beliefs you've carried since childhood. And the baby Ochi? It's just a scared kid looking for its mom. Sometimes the simplest character objectives hit hardest when executed with precision and care. These aren't performances designed to win awards or generate clip-worthy moments. They're performances designed to make you believe in a world where mythical creatures exist and humans have spent generations misunderstanding them. Not because humans are stupid, but because fear is inherited and it takes genuine courage to question what you've been taught. That's what makes this ensemble work. They're all playing people trapped by their own certainties, slowly learning that transformation requires discomfort, and they commit to that process with the kind of grounded humanity that makes fantasy feel like documentary. These aren't performances designed to win awards or generate clip-worthy moments. They're performances designed to make you believe in a world where mythical creatures exist, and humans have spent generations misunderstanding them. Not because humans are stupid, but because fear is inherited and it takes genuine courage to question what you've been taught. That's what makes this ensemble work. They're all playing people trapped by their own certainties, slowly learning that transformation requires discomfort. Isaiah Saxon made a choice that sounds absolutely insane in 2025. Build the creature for real, not as reference for CGI artists, not as partial elements to be enhanced later. Build it completely, practically, and film it in camera as much as humanly possible. In an era when studios default to digital because it's safer, Saxon went the opposite direction, embracing the limitations and unpredictability of physical puppetry, specifically because those imperfections create authenticity. John Nolan. Studios in London became the birthplace of the baby Ochi, and the technical specifications are remarkable. Inside that grapefruit-sized head, approximately 25 individual servo motors controlling facial expressions. 2 puppeteers dedicated solely to the face, one managing the enormous eyes and expressive eyebrows, another handling the mouth and subtle cheek movements. The remaining 3 to 4 performers manipulated the body using rods attached to each limb, creating the kind of uncertain, exploratory movements you see in actual baby primates learning to navigate their bodies. What's brilliant about this approach is how it forces everyone on set to collaborate differently. Helena Zingle isn't performing alone. She's working with 6 other performers who are as committed to the scene as she is. When the baby Ochi tilts its head curiously, that's a puppeteer making a character choice in real time. When its ears flatten in fear, someone's responding to the emotional tenor of the moment. The puppet becomes a genuine scene partner rather than a placeholder for future effects work. Saxon studied Jim Henson's approach to creature work, but he also looked at wildlife documentaries. He wanted the Ochi to move like real animals, specifically drawing inspiration from Chinese golden snub-nosed monkeys, lemurs, and tarsiers. That research shows in how the baby Ochi uses its tail for balance, how it grooms itself with small fidgeting movements during quiet moments, how it startles at sudden sounds with full-body flinches that travel from ears to tail tip. These aren't anthropomorphized cartoon gestures. They're observed animal behavior translated through fantasy creature design. The adult Ochi presented different challenges, larger scale, more complex movement requirements, but still achieved primarily through practical means. Saxon's team built full-size animatronic adults that could be photographed directly, supplementing with digital work only where physics made practical achievement impossible. That commitment to tangibility extends to the environments, real forests, actual cave systems, locations that exist in the physical world rather than on green screen stages. Cinematographer Evan Persofsky shoots The Legend of Ochi like it's nature documentary footage of a species that happens to be mythical. The camera work is patient, observational, prioritizing natural light even when that makes scenes technically harder to expose properly. When Yuri first encounters the baby Ochi in the forest, Persofsky doesn't cut to close-ups immediately or use dramatic camera movements to manufacture emotion. The camera stays at middle distance, letting us watch the encounter unfold in something approaching real time, trusting that the performances and creature work will hold our attention without visual gymnastics. That restraint pays off throughout. The forest sequences are shot with the kind of handheld steadiness you'd see in prestige documentaries, movement that suggests human presence behind the camera without calling attention to itself. When Yuri navigates difficult terrain, the camera follows her naturally, occasionally losing her behind trees or rocks the way a documentary crew might. It's not sloppy. It's deliberately constructed naturalism that makes the fantasy elements feel grounded in documentary reality. The cave sequences shift the visual language appropriately. Here, Persofsky embraces darkness. Not the clean Hollywood darkness where you can see everything perfectly, but genuine low-light conditions where headlamps create harsh pools of illumination surrounded by absolute black. The underwater swim is shot with disorienting close-ups and genuine murk, making the audience feel Yuri's claustrophobia and panic. When they finally emerge into the cathedral cavern, the shift in natural light streaming from above becomes genuinely transcendent. Earned relief after sustained tension. Color grading deserves mention too. A24 films often have distinctive color palettes, and The Legend of Ochi is no exception. The film skews toward earth tones, browns, greens, muted grays, making the baby Ochi's orange fur pop without looking unnatural. Maxim's ceremonial armor has a tarnished bronze quality that reads as ancient and heavy. The only times we see vibrant colors are in the Ochi venom effects, that distinctive blue-purple bruising on Yuri's arm, and in the brief glimpses of bioluminescence in the deeper cave systems. It's a restrained palette that makes specific visual elements land with more impact. Sound design might be the film's most underrated technical achievement. The Ochi language isn't just random creature noises, it's a fully developed communication system with consistent phonetic patterns, tonal variations that convey meaning, and musical qualities that make it genuinely beautiful to listen to. The sound team worked with linguists and animal vocalization experts to create something that splits the difference between recognized animal calls and invented alien speech. 2. Listen to how the baby Ochi's vocalizations change throughout the film. Early scenes, when it's scared and alone, feature high-pitched, staccato chirps with irregular rhythm, distress calls that sound desperate even before Yuri understands what they mean. As it relaxes with Yuri, the vocalizations become lower in pitch, more melodic, with flowing phrases that resemble birdsong. By the reunion with its mother, the sounds are rich and complex, layering multiple tones simultaneously in a way that suggests joy and relief without needing translation. The adult Ochi have deeper, more resonant vocalizations. When the pack communicates across distances in the forest, their calls echo and overlap, creating harmonies that are genuinely eerie, beautiful but alien, music from another branch of evolution. Saxon uses this sound design to build the Ochi culture without extensive exposition. We hear them communicating complex information rapidly, responding to each other's calls with precision, and the sophistication of their language becomes undeniable evidence of their intelligence. The forest itself has layered sound design that rewards attention. Wind through different types of vegetation creates varied textures. Water streams, rain, the underground river is recorded with clarity that makes each source distinct. When the hunting party moves through the woods, their equipment jangles and scrapes, announcing human presence with mechanical noise that contrasts sharply with the organic sounds of the Ochi moving through the same terrain virtually silently. It's sound design that's doing narrative work, reinforcing the thematic opposition between human intrusion and natural inhabitants. David Longstreth's score understands when to support and when to step back. Longstreth, known for his experimental rock band Dirty Projectors, brings that adventurous sensibility to the composition. The score uses unusual instrumentation: prepared piano, bowed vibraphone, processed woodwinds, creating textures that feel organic but slightly alien, like the Ochi themselves. During Yuri's journey sequences, the music often incorporates melodic fragments that mirror Ochi vocalizations, blurring the line between score and diegetic sound. Crucially, Longstreth doesn't overscore emotional moments. When the baby Ochi reunites with its mother, there's no swelling orchestral climax. Instead, the music drops away almost entirely, letting the creature's vocalizations and the actors' performances carry the weight. The score returns for the aftermath, but quietly, a simple piano melody that suggests resolution without forcing sentiment. Production design by Jade Healy creates a world that feels lived in and specific. Carpathia isn't some generic fantasy village. It's contemporary with Wi-Fi and modern plumbing, but layered with older traditions that haven't been abandoned. Maxim's ceremonial armor coexists with satellite dishes, Ancient hunting rituals happen in view of power lines. This cultural layering makes the setting feel real, a place where modernity arrived but didn't completely erase what came before. The Ochi themselves are designed with this same attention to biological plausibility. Their fur has variations in length and texture across different body parts. Their ears rotate independently, tracking sound sources the way real animals do. Their hands have opposable thumbs and flexible fingers capable of manipulation, suggesting tool use capability even if we don't see them using tools in the film. These are details that might go unnoticed consciously but register subconsciously, building belief in the Ochi as a species that could actually exist. Dasha's research station is production design excellence in miniature. It's clearly been there for years. Weathered equipment, notebooks showing water damage from past seasons, repairs done with whatever materials were available. Solar panels are angled for maximum efficiency. Storage is elevated to prevent flood damage. Every detail suggests someone who's adapted to wilderness living out of necessity and made it work through practical ingenuity. Emily Watson's performance in that space gains authority from how thoroughly the design supports her character's scientific commitment. Saxon's directorial hand is visible in how all these elements integrate toward a specific vision, fantasy, that earns its magic through grounded craft. Coming from Encyclopedia Pictura, where he created visually striking music videos and experimental film work, Saxon could have gone maximalist. Instead, he chose restraint. The film's most fantastical element, the Ochi, is rendered through the oldest filmmaking technique there is, puppetry. The wonder comes not from impossible CGI spectacle, but from the simple reality of watching something that shouldn't exist, move with genuine physicality in real environments. etc. Saxon's pacing reflects this grounded approach. The film takes time, scenes breathe. The underwater sequence is genuinely uncomfortable in its length. We feel Yuri's oxygen deprivation because Saxon doesn't cut away to relieve tension prematurely. The language learning sequences allow for the repetition and frustration that actual learning requires. Even the final confrontation in the cave isn't rushed. Maxim's breakdown happens slowly, earned through accumulated pressure rather than single dramatic revelation. What's remarkable about Saxon's debut feature is how confident it feels. First-time directors often overstuff their films trying to prove they can do everything. Saxon does the opposite. He picks specific elements to focus on and executes them with precision. The creature work is extraordinary. The family drama is emotionally complex. The environmental filmmaking is beautiful. He doesn't try to also be an action spectacular or a comedy or a romance. He knows what story he's telling and trusts that specificity to be enough. The film's climax, that moment when the baby Ochi approaches Maxim, is directed with remarkable simplicity. Saxon stages it in one long take, camera static, letting the puppeteers and Dafoe work through the beat without cutting. It would be so easy to fragment that moment, to manufacture emotion through editorial rhythm. Instead, Saxon trusts his collaborators and holds the shot, and the result is infinitely more powerful than cutting could achieve. In a blockbuster landscape dominated by digital spectacle and franchise management, The Legend of Ochi feels like a statement of purpose. A24's fantasy film argues that wonder doesn't require endless budgets or cutting-edge CGI. It requires craft, patience, and the courage to build things with your hands and film them with respect for what physical creation can achieve. Every technical choice in this film serves character and theme. The practical puppetry makes the Ochi vulnerable and real. The naturalistic cinematography grounds fantasy and documentary observation. The linguistic sound design proves intelligence without language barriers. The restrained score trusts silence and diegetic sound. The production design creates cultural specificity rather than generic fantasy. This is filmmaking that remembers cinema's artisanal roots while using modern tools selectively. Saxon and his team built a world you can believe in because they built it, actually built it, and pointed cameras at what they made. That's not nostalgia for older techniques. That's understanding what those techniques still do better than anything else, make the impossible feel genuinely present. In a blockbuster landscape dominated by digital spectacle and franchise management, The Legend of Ochi feels like a statement of purpose. A24's first fantasy film argues that wonder doesn't require endless budgets or cutting-edge CGI. It requires craft, patience, and the courage to build things with your hands and film them with respect for what physical creation can achieve. This is filmmaking that remembers cinema's artisanal roots while using modern tools selectively. The baby Ochi doesn't speak English. Yuri doesn't magically understand its language through destiny or prophecy. She learns it through effort, repetition, mistakes, and the slow accumulation of pattern recognition. That choice, Making communication earned, rather than granted, is the thematic foundation of everything. The Legend of Ochi explores notch quo. Language becomes the film's central metaphor for empathy itself. You can't understand what you refuse to listen to. You can't empathize with what you've decided is beneath comprehension. Maxim's entire ideology rests on the assumption that the Ochi are just animals, dangerous, instinct-driven, incapable of the complex social structures and emotional depth that would make killing them morally complicated. The existence of their sophisticated language destroys that assumption completely. What's fascinating is how Saxon connects linguistic understanding to moral responsibility. Once Yuri comprehends that the baby Ochi is specifically, desperately calling for its mother, she can't unhear that. Once she understands the adult Ochi communicate complex information about territory, family bonds, and collective safety, she can't pretend they're mindless anymore. Understanding creates obligation. That's a heavier thematic statement than most fantasy films dare to make. The idea that ignorance might be easier than knowledge because knowledge demands we change our behavior. The film interrogates how fear becomes inherited truth across generations. Maxim wasn't born hating the Ochi. Somewhere in his past, something happened, or someone told him something happened, and he built an entire identity around that initial fear. Then he passed it down to Yuri, to Petro, to those young hunters he's dressed in ceremonial armor, creating a lineage of violence justified by increasingly abstract threats. The Ochi become a symbol rather than a reality, something to oppose rather than understand. This mirrors how real-world prejudice operates. First-generation bigotry at least has contact with whatever initial conflict sparked the hatred. By the third or fourth generation, people are perpetuating violence against groups they've never actually encountered, based purely on inherited narrative. Yuri represents the moment when someone in that chain finally says, "Wait, let me actually look at what I've been taught to fear. Family dysfunction becomes the mechanism through which the film explores these ideas about inherited belief. Maxim's amputation of Dasha's arm, presented as life-saving action, experienced as traumatic violation, literalizes how patriarchal authority can damage while claiming to protect. He cut off her hand to save her from Ochi venom, but in doing so he also cut off her agency, her research, her ability to make informed choices about her own body and beliefs. That she leaves him afterward isn't the abandonment of her family, it's survival. Dasha's estrangement from Yuri is the collateral damage of that impossible choice. She couldn't stay in Maxim's household and maintain her research into Ochi intelligence. She couldn't be both the mother Yuri needed and the scientist her conscience demanded she become. Emily Watson's performance captures the weight of that no-win situation, a woman who chose knowledge over presence and has lived with that guilt ever since. The film doesn't let her off the hook for that choice, but it also doesn't simplify the circumstances that forced it. New Yuri's journey, then, becomes about healing multiple fractures simultaneously. She's repairing the human-Ochi relationship by returning the baby. She's repairing her relationship with Dasha by understanding why her mother left. She's attempting to repair her relationship with Maxim by forcing him to confront reality instead of ideology. And she's repairing her relationship with herself, recovering the knowledge Maxim suppressed when he forbade Dasha from teaching her the Ochi language as a toddler. That revelation, that Yuri knew this language once before and had it taken from her, reframes her entire character arc. She's not discovering something new. She's recovering something stolen. The venom bite doesn't grant her understanding. It cracks open the suppression that's been blocking access to knowledge she already possessed. It's a powerful metaphor for how trauma and authoritarian control work. They don't erase what we know, they just make it harder to access. Environmental themes run through the film without becoming preachy. The wildfire that initiates the crisis is never given a specific cause, but the implication is clear. Human activity on the island is changing ecosystems in ways that endanger both Ochi and villagers. Maxim's response to this crisis is to kill the displaced creatures rather than question what displaced them. It's the extractive, domination-based relationship to nature that assumes human needs supersede ecological balance. Dasha represents the alternative: study, understand, adapt, coexist. Her research station operates on solar power. She's integrated herself into the wilderness rather than trying to conquer it. She's learned the Ochi's language and migration patterns, working to understand their role in the island's ecosystem rather than eliminating them from it. The film doesn't hit you over the head with environmental messaging, but the contrast between these two approaches to nature is undeniable. The reunion between the baby Ochi and its mother carries emotional weight precisely because it's not just about individual relationship, it's about restoring correct order after human interference has disrupted it. Yuri isn't the hero who saves the creature. She's the human who finally did the minimum ethical action, returned a baby to its parent after her species nearly orphaned it. That's not heroism, that's basic decency after systemic wrong. Which brings us to the film's most challenging thematic territory, what Maxim's breakdown actually represents. Willem Dafoe talked about his character experiencing enlightenment at the end of his radicalization, and that phrasing is so precise. Maxim doesn't just learn he was wrong about the Ochi, he realizes he's built his entire life, his entire sense of purpose and identity, on a lie. Everything he's taught those young hunters, everything he used to justify pushing Dasha away, everything that's defined him as a man and a father. All of it collapses when a baby creature lets him touch its face and he feels, physically, the intelligence and vulnerability he's denied for decades. Time. The film doesn't offer easy redemption for that. Maxim removing his armor and asking to learn the language is a start, but it's only a start. You can't undo years of indoctrination and violence with one cathartic moment. The thematic weight of that final scene is less about forgiveness and more about the possibility of transformation. The idea that even someone as certain and damaging as Maxim can, when confronted with undeniable reality, choose to rebuild himself from scratch. The Legend of Ochi asks what it costs to question what you've been taught. For Yuri, it nearly costs her life. For Dasha, it cost her marriage and years with her daughter. For Petro, it costs his place in the only family structure he's known. For Maxim, it costs his entire identity. The film doesn't pretend that rejecting inherited fear is easy or safe. It's costly, but it's also necessary. Because on the other side of that cost is the possibility of actual connection. A girl speaking a creature's language, a mother and daughter building tentative bridges, a man stripped of his armor finally vulnerable enough to learn, a family fractured by ideology slowly discovering that curiosity might be stronger than certainty. That's the deepest theme here. Certainty is comfortable and devastating. Curiosity is uncomfortable and essential. Choose accordingly. The Legend of Ochi asks what it costs to question what you've been taught. For Yuri, it nearly cost her life. For Dasha, it cost her marriage and years with her daughter. For Petro, it costs his place in the only family structure he's known. For Maxim, it costs his entire identity. The film doesn't pretend that rejecting inherited fear is easy or safe. It's costly, but it's also necessary. Because on the other side of that cost is the possibility of actual connection. When The Legend of Ochi premiered at Sundance in January 2025 before its April theatrical release, audiences weren't sure what they were walking into. A24 making a fantasy film? With puppets? In 2025? The studio known for Hereditary and Everything Everywhere. All at once, suddenly pivoting to creature feature family adventure seemed like the strangest possible move. Then people saw it, and suddenly it made perfect sense. Because this is exactly what A24 does, takes genres that have calcified into formula and asks, what if we approach this with the same artistic ambition we bring to prestige drama? They did it with horror. They did it with sci-fi. Now they're doing it with fantasy adventure, proving that family film doesn't have to mean sanitized or dumbed down. Kids can handle complex family dynamics. They can handle moral ambiguity. They can handle stories where the supposed protector is actually causing harm and has to fundamentally change. The film arrived at an interesting cultural moment. We're watching practical effects make a legitimate comeback, not as nostalgia bait, but as viable methodology for filmmakers tired of the homogenized look of digital creature work. Guillermo del Toro's been advocating for this for years. The Mandalorian brought puppetry back to Star Wars with Baby Yoda, but those are franchise properties with built-in audiences. The Legend of Ochi is an original IP betting everything on practical craft, and its success proves there's genuine appetite for tangible filmmaking even without franchise recognition. Isaiah Saxon's using this debut to stake out territory. He's showing that experimental filmmaking backgrounds, music videos, art installations, boundary-pushing visual work can translate to narrative features without losing their adventurous spirit. Encyclopedia Pictora's sensibility is all over this film, but it's in service of storytelling rather than spectacle for its own sake. That's the balance more filmmakers need to find. What's particularly significant is how the film handles its environmental and political themes without being didactic. In an era of increasingly polarized discourse about science, expertise, and who gets to define truth, The Legend of Ochi offers a parable about the dangers of inherited certainty and the necessity of first-hand investigation. Maxim is every person who's built their worldview on what they were told rather than what they've verified. Yuri is everyone who's ever had to choose between comfortable belief and uncomfortable truth. That resonates differently in 2025 than it might have a decade ago. We're living through the consequences of misinformation, radicalization, and the weaponization of fear against the other, whether that's immigrant populations, religious minorities, or, in this film's metaphor, creatures we've decided are monsters without ever actually understanding them. The film doesn't beat you over the head with contemporary parallels, but they're there for anyone paying attention. Uds. The critical reception has been notably warm, with reviewers praising exactly what makes the film unusual: its patience, its craft, its willingness to let scenes breathe and characters actually change. Variety called it a film of practical magic, recognizing how Saxon's technical choices serve emotional storytelling. It's the kind of reception that suggests the film will find its audience over time, becoming one of those works that parents show their kids, that film students study for its creature work, that gets rediscovered as the cultural conversation catches up to what it's actually saying. For A24, this represents expansion without compromise. They're proving you can make accessible, family-friendly content without abandoning artistic ambition or thematic complexity. That's valuable. The studio's already known for auteur-driven work. Now they're showing that category can include fantasy adventure when approached with the same creative integrity they bring to everything else. Where does the Legend of Ochi leave us? With a template, maybe. A proof of concept that original fantasy can work if you commit to craft over convenience, if you trust audiences to handle complexity, if you build your creatures with human hands and film them with respect for what physical presence creates on screen. The Ochi exists now. Not just in this film, but in the imagination of everyone who's seen that baby creature look into the camera with those impossibly large eyes and chirp its musical language. That's what practical effects achieve, that CGI often doesn't. They create something that occupied real space, that actors touched and responded to, that became real through collective human effort. And maybe that's the final lesson here. In a digital age, there's profound power in making things physical, in choosing the hard path because the hard path produces results you can't achieve any other way. In building creatures with servos and fur and puppeteer collaboration instead of render farms and motion capture. The Ochi language translates to more than just story communication. It translates to a filmmaking philosophy. Learn to speak in registers you've forgotten, question what you've inherited, build the impossible with your hands, and trust that craft still matters. The caves are full of creatures we've misunderstood. Time to learn their language and actually listen.